for a learning event. It's not an entertaining event. It's not Netflix. It's not Prime. And that too, to hear a doctor whose name also sounds, my God, I don't know what she's really going to talk. But I guarantee you it's going to be a really, really great learning experience for all of you. A little bit about Read to Lead for all those who are new here today. Read to Lead is a platform for a learning community, which has been created by me with help of few friends. And the thought was that there are people who want to really learn, who want to really discuss, who want to really share, but we really don't have enough platforms. And so that thought actually was there 3 years back. And over the coffee, a few friends just decided, and I said, okay, then what stops us? Why not? And luckily for me, I really met such lovely people in this journey that everybody was there to help you, and there was no formal marketing done. It was every time with word of mouth. We've got really so much of love and loyalty for these programs that we've done. There are really celebrity authors like Radhakrishnan Pillai, Anand Nilkantan, Greenson, and so many, Rishi Nanda. There are so many authors and so many eminent speakers from industry have blessed this, forum. And every time we look forward to the next speaker, and all the members have made it so interesting because they are not mute listeners. They all introspect. And when we used to have the physical session in SIS College of Management, there used to be a lot of interaction, a question answer session, and the entire experience was so enriching. We all have really loved the journey. And in March, suddenly we realized that it's not possible now. But luckily we didn't stop. We started virtual sessions, and there we are. I think it's seventh or eighth virtual session that we are having. We didn't miss even 1 month session. And thank you so much for all the support. And we've tried covering all the different genres because we didn't want to stick to only self-help books, leadership books, or training books. But I think we've covered all the genres, be it astrology, be it mythology, fiction, drama. And today we are going to have a book on sleep. Now, why we thought that this book would be really important to discuss today is generally also, I think we all are under tremendous stress. And especially in this pandemic, I hear just before we started the session, I was discussing with somebody. So they said it's no more 8 or 9 hours session that I have to give. I mean, it's not 8 or 9 hours job that I really cater to. It's 24 hours job now. And I have been hearing this from everybody, those who are working from home. Parents are pissed off because they have to do their job. They have to do their, kids make them sit in the virtual platform. Nitin, can you just take care of the, yeah.
Yes, yes.
Can you please keep everybody else on mute? Yeah. And thereby, we all are under tremendous stress, as well as the sleep is, I think, is really become a big concern. My own example, yesterday for the whole night, I was thinking of something and I couldn't sleep. Morning 4:30, I get up and send an SMS to a colleague of mine for discussing something. And she actually called me at 6:30 and we discussed. And that was just too much for me to do it. But that pressure is so much that you are actually, getting more and more deprived of sleep. And I would just now want to know more about how the sleep really helps us. And now about our speaker today, Dr. Archana Kavalkat. And she is pediatrician and neonatologist. And for the first time, I'll be actually reading, because the words are really difficult to pronounce, and I don't want to make any mistake, because you know how strict doctors are. So she has worked at Hiranandani, Curie, and Jupiter Hospital, head of the neonatal care and Curie Gynac and Birthing Hospital at Thane. And I have a privilege of interacting with her own patients, because they are also trainers and few participants of mine, and the kind of feedbacks that I have received. And she's a very, very, today's doctor. So she's there all over social media. There are a lot of videos which are available. She interacts with people virtually, and there are a lot of learning sessions that she does. So I had requested her to be here on this platform, and I'm really humbled and honored that she has said yes to be here today. You know how doctors are busy, but she's really made that time. And thank you so much, Dr. Archana. And over to you. Thank you so much. We can start.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Vasu, and good morning to all you enthusiastic people out there. First and foremost, I'd like to find out if everybody can hear me clearly.
Yes.
And if at any point you feel you can't, please do let me know, because there may be a problem sometime with the net or something like that. So I would really like to thank Vasu so much for letting me speak today. First and foremost, let me be very clear. I'm not a sleep specialist. So I'm a pediatrician, and I am supposed to be catering to that population of people who are supposed to be sleeping very well. Children, babies, they are supposed to sleep well. So I can't claim to be a sleep specialist. However, being a medical professional, maybe like a gentleman was saying, there are some very difficult aspects in this book. Maybe they were a little easier for me, and I hope to walk you through this book, Why We Sleep, is in a stepwise fashion. And why I chose Why We Sleep is because I have a very
sorry, Archana. Nitin, we have to record the session.
Yes, going on.
Yeah.
Can I proceed?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So why I chose this book, Why We Sleep, is because I have a very loving relationship with sleep, and as I go through this presentation, I'll tell you why. And I think it is such an important aspect of our lives and we pay such less attention to it, and hence the choice of this book, Why We Sleep. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah. So I read this book in the Kindle format, Why We Sleep. It is written by Matthew Walker. And I would recommend, if you pick up this book, please go for the hard copy, because there are times when you have to flip from here to there, and I feel that it is far better if you go for the hard copy than the Kindle. So that's just a suggestion. Next slide, please. Next slide, please, Nitin.
Archana, I'm doing it. It takes a little time because there's a time lag.
Okay. Yeah. So the plan that I have is that I'll just go through in a stepwise fashion. We'll talk about sleep a bit, and we'll have a small questionnaire, because I would have really liked this on a forum where we could have interacted. But since we are limited by our distances, we'll go for as much as interaction as is possible. And I would request, if you feel that at any point you want to have me clarify some things, I will do so. Then after the questionnaire, we will go through the the book, basically what it is all about, then a few criticisms of the book, because any book, there are critics who look at certain aspects which we need to be very careful when we are interpreting books. Finally, I would like to give you my take as a medical professional on sleep and what you should carry away from this book. And last 15 minutes, I want to reserve for discussion, and I'd like Vasu to be alert on that and just warn me when it's time to do so. Yeah. So next slide, please. So the author, Matthew Walker, is basically a doctor who took into sleep study as his profession. So we all know that sleep is very, very important. And why is sleep so important? Why do all of us spend almost a third of our lives sleeping? Why can't we be more awake? We know that all our activities make us expend energy. The brain, the body, the muscles are all constantly working. And so by resting, we give a chance to our bodies and minds to rest. There is better energy to perform better. It gives you joy. You must have heard about circadian rhythm or the mental clock. I have a very strong mental clock, and I am sure many of you all are aware of that. For example, no matter what time I sleep, I wake up at 5 o'clock. It's been happening for years. And no matter what time I sleep, whether the alarm rings or not, I can wake up. So what is circadian rhythm? Circa is around, and dia is day. It's Latin. So it is something that keeps the cycle of the day going. And there are certain factors in the body and in the environment that are responsible for keeping up this cycle through the day. So one should be aware of this as we talk, because we will be talking more about this. I wanted to stress a bit on the medical profession and sleep, because me being a doctor, we belong. I could hear some disturbance. Am I audible?
Sorry.
Can you please all keep on mute?
Yeah. So as a medical professional, we are one of the group of people who are always sleep deprived. I remember when I went into medical college, the first exam, which is a Viva. You all must have heard about Vivas in the medical profession. They are one of the scariest exams that can be for anyone. So the first Viva was an anatomy Viva, and I was not prepared for it. So I decided the first time in my life, I'd never done this before, no matter what exam it was for this. I decided that I'm going to keep awake. Let me see. So it was 12 o'clock at night. I kept cramming. I put the alarm for 4 o'clock in the morning and told my mother, wake me up at 4 o'clock. I woke up at 4, and with 4 hours of sleep, I went for my Viva. Yeah, somebody says they can't hear. So
Yeah, it's breaking a bit. Maybe the flow of internet or broadband is in this thing, but now it was clear. So you can continue. I'll request all others to keep their videos also on off. Mode,
yeah,
please.
yeah.
Yeah.
That
keep
way
your
the thing
audio and video both off. Yeah. You
Yeah.
can continue now, Archana.
Yeah. So, so I was talking about the time when I crammed up all the knowledge that I could, 4 hours of sleep, and went for the exam. And I realized that no, I could not remember anything. And the little that I did in a drowsy state, and obviously did not perform the way I wanted to. And that's when I realized that no matter what people say, that, oh, sleep is supposed to be for the lazy, sleep is supposed to be something that suits people do, it's something that each one needs, and each one needs different quantities of sleep. So from then on, I gave myself enough time to sleep, and I realized I could sail through my medical college pretty good with hardly any sacrifice in the department of sleep. Now, as a pediatrician, many people feel that I don't deal with too many patients with sleep problems. But believe me, the younger the child, if there is a sleep problem, a mother coming saying that child doesn't sleep, etc., more difficult it is for me to try to help them, because older people, etc., can follow instructions and we can work with them. But here we are working with a population which, may not always take instructions the way we want them to. So please do not discount the fact that children also may have sleep issues. We will see more about it as we go on. Siesta or power naps, this is something that I feel is extremely important. That is something that I used to see my mother doing, half an hour of sleep no matter what, and I realized how energizing it used to be. And now, even now, I try to give myself that little time of the siesta, and you will see why it helps as we walk through this book. 6 hours or 8 hours? Really, that is the question, and we will try to solve that matter. And I would like your opinions on what you all are doing about this. We'll go to the next slide now. So I was talking about the author and what his take on sleep is. And before that, I wanted to share a picture of Kumbhakarna. Very often I was called Kumbhakarna in my younger days, because when I would sleep, it was really difficult to wake me up. So no matter of what kind of noises and disturbances were made, it was extremely difficult. And as an adolescent, the depth of my sleep was just remarkable. So by the way, I just wanted to share this little bit of information I got as I was researching sleep, that Kumbhakarna is supposed to have had some kind of medical disease because of which he used to eat a lot, he used to sleep a lot, and he used to get angry a lot. So you all remember that in the war, he was woken up from his sleep with all these interactions. Next slide, please. And because of this, Ram managed to get the better of him. So sleep is such an important thing that no matter how high and mighty you are, if you are deprived of your sleep, you can take the hit, because it is something so important to your system. So there was the end of Kumbhakarna, because he was woken up from his sleep. Next slide. So the author, Matthew Walker, is a Britisher, next slide, who gave up his clinical medicine and became a sleep scientist. And now he practices in University of California in Berkeley. They have a sleep lab there. And I'll tell you a bit. Vasu, am I audible? Again,
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You're very clear. Yeah.
So I'll tell you a bit about what they do in the sleep labs. So sleep labs are places where they study people, animals as well, who are made to go through the routine of the day. Their patterns of sleep are studied. Then when they wake up, their behavior in terms of their activities, their eating patterns, their blood pressures, their pulse rates, etc., everything is checked. In case of human beings, very intense studies are done in these sleep labs where they deprive them of sleep and try to see the effect of this deprivation on their memory, on their behavior, etc. In animals, some of the studies, I think the animal lovers may really not like. But yes, these are studies that are done, for example, deprivation of sleep in mice, and maybe looking at results in their brain after dissecting the brain to see what goes wrong with the brain in mice that have been sleep deprived. So these labs are really the platform from where all research is done, and more news about sleep has been coming due to these dedicated researchers who have spent years and years together in studying sleep, and Matthew Walker is one of them. Next slide, please. So coming to the book review, I put this picture of Bill Gates here because it is one of his recommended books. So it is really a good book, and if you read it with some insight, as I am wanting to share with you, it will be giving you a huge power of a base of knowledge by which you can plan your life. So there are a few criticisms which we will go to the end, so please take it bit by bit. Next. So first and foremost, the author starts with the with the pineal gland. So here I think maybe as a medical professional, I will try my best to make it as simple as possible for you. So this is the cross section of the brain where you can see certain parts. So just focus on this red dot that is called the pineal gland. When I was studying medicine, I remember the books that I read mentioned that the pineal gland is an organ of which the function we are not very clear of. They were not sure what it secretes, what it does. So just during our studies, we never even used to bother to read that short note on pineal gland because we knew that in our exams, not even a short note is going to be asked. So it was such an ignored part of the brain anatomy. I also want you to note the thalamus, which is a structure which is right there in the center, which we will be talking about later, and the hypothalamus, which lies below that. So the thalamus is a structure which is like a gateway of all the information that comes from the body comes to the thalamus, and from there it goes into the cortex where the information is stored. So this gateway shuts or opens, and on the basis of that the signals in the brain are set. So these two parts are those that you need to know. Next slide, please. So I want you to see this picture of Shiva because the pineal gland is equated with the third eye. You know that Shiva is normally a very calm god. He can be fooled. He is Bholenath. But when it comes to his anger, when he activates his third eye, which I believe is considered to be the power coming from the pineal gland, when he opens his third eye, then his rage, his anger has no bounds. And the third eye is also something that gives him insight into things that are not seen normally. Next slide. So the pineal gland particularly is actually an endocrine organ, just like the thyroid and the pancreas and the pituitary. And it secretes a hormone which is called as melatonin. Okay. And melatonin helps in setting up the circadian rhythm. This is a hormone which comes into play somewhere in the evening, and as the levels of this hormone start increasing in the system, the body starts slowly switching off. So it's called a sleep hormone. The body's mechanisms, the activity of the neurons start slowly reducing in their intensity, and you go into sleep. And as you wake up, again, the melatonin goes down. Not only does the melatonin play a role in the circadian rhythm, but it also sets the timing for the sexual maturation. So the pineal gland and its activities with its hormones sets the time for sexual maturation, sexual awareness in children. So a child who is not at all aware of his or her sexuality starts becoming aware at a particular time. So there's a clockwork thing. So it happens at a certain time for some children and a certain time for other children. Next slide, please. So how does this work? You know that when it's bright daylight, we feel awake all the time and we are not able to sleep. So why is this? Because the light hits the eye through the optic nerve and stimulates a place called as the suprachiasmatic nucleus. So it's not important to remember the name of the nucleus, but a part of the brain is hit. And that part connects to the pineal gland. It sends signals to the pineal gland. And the pineal gland suppresses its secretion of melatonin. As the day goes from the bright sunlight to the evening, the levels of melatonin slowly starts rising. Next slide, please. Slowly starts rising in the evening. And as you can see that around 7 or 8 o'clock, the levels are slowly rising and the pineal gland has started producing the melatonin. It rises to around its peak by 3 p.m. plateaus and then again starts reducing. So this is the time that melatonin puts you to sleep and then comes down and then you wake up. So this is what we call as a circadian rhythm. Next slide. So in the book, what you might find a little difficult to understand, I've tried to put very simply over here. When you are active in the daytime, your brain is functioning and secreting certain waste products because the brain uses energy and I don't know if any of you all know this, but the brain can use energy only as glucose. No fat, no protein. It uses only glucose. So this is metabolized and adenosine is one of the waste products. And as you go through the day, I wish I could point, but anyway, note the darker line. As you wake up in the day, the adenosine starts rising gradually from 7 a.m. onwards. And as the adenosine starts rising, it gives you a slightly sleepy effect because the waste products, that's the adenosine primarily, and certain others are rising, and it makes the network which is connecting the brain to the other parts slow down a bit. So as you go towards the end of the day, the adenosine has peaked and you feel really sleepy and the melatonin kicks off at that time, okay, and then you go to sleep. When you go to sleep, the adenosine levels get washed off because the sleep is the time when the brain is actually washing off all this accumulated waste from the body, and your melatonin is taking over and keeping you quiet at that time. And then at the end of the night, morning comes, and again your adenosine being washed up, your brain is back into action, and there goes the next cycle again. So this is the wake and sleep drive that we talk about. When you take coffee or any caffeinated drink, what happens is that the caffeine in the coffee blocks the receptors which the adenosine will act on. The adenosine acts on certain receptors and tells them that, okay, my level is rising now. So now time to go to sleep. But the coffee blocks these receptors. So no matter how high your adenosine level is, it blocks it, the receptors, and fools them into believing that
Matra plastic crayons घेतो.
So please keep on mute.
Yeah, and fools them into believing that the adenosine is not there, and then you feel fresh, but temporarily. And then once the caffeine wears off, the adenosine has really built up, and then you feel more sleepy. Okay, so this is the way your coffee is hitting. I thought I'd explain it now rather than later because we are on adenosine at this moment. Next slide, please. So a little bit about sleep. I'm sure all of you have heard of REM sleep. There are music groups which call themselves REM, and you have heard of non-REM sleep. So what is REM? Rapid eye movement, and non-REM is non-rapid eye movement. So just think about yourself in the evening, dinner is over and all jobs done. You start feeling sleepy, you hit the bed. Once you hit the bed, there is a transition period between your bright awake state and slowly drifting into sleep. 5 to 10 minutes go there. That is called stage 1 of non-REM sleep. From here, I can wake you up pretty quickly. It's not deep, so you are still fairly aware of your surroundings. Then slowly you go deeper and deeper into sleep as your melatonin levels are going higher and higher. And then you go into the stage 2, and stage 3 of non-REM sleep. What happens in stage 2 is the body temperature slowly comes down, the heart slows down, the brain receives less and less signals from outside and goes into a state of sleep which lasts for around 20 minutes. Then comes the very important part of sleep, that is the deep sleep. The deep non-REM sleep is extremely important, particularly for children, because many important activities in their growing brain happen at this time. So again, further drop in blood pressure, muscles are relaxed, but they can move, but they are relaxed. They are not paralyzed, they are relaxed. Just note the difference. So this is the deepest sleep, and many activities happen in this time, stage 3 REM. So after stage 3 REM, which lasts for around half an hour to 45 minutes or 1 hour as well, you go into the REM sleep. The REM sleep, or the rapid eye movement sleep, in the past, scientists used to believe that this is a dream sleep, which is true, of course, it is a dream sleep, and the rapid eye movement is because you're chasing things that you see in your dreams. Like you're seeing things, so your eyes are moving because you're following it. No, there is no control, and the eyes are basically a reflection of the activity in the brain, the movement of the eyes. So there is nothing to do with, you might be dreaming of placid water, but your eyes could be moving. So it's like that. During the sleep, what happens is amazing, is that the brain becomes very active and the body is relaxed, so much so that it is almost paralyzed. So I mentioned the thalamus, if you can recollect a few minutes back. What the thalamus does, it's a gateway. So the gateway just closes. It just stops sending signals from the cortex down to the muscles. So because it has stopped sending the signals to the muscles just can't move. So I'm sure even I figured this out for myself when I was reading, that in my dream, when I feel I'm running, I many times feel my legs are just not moving, and it's like I'm paralyzed, and it's such a scary feeling. So this is because actually the body is literally unable to move, and sleep scientists have proof to show that the body just does not move. So the thalamus has just cut off signals at that stage, and the active brain is just buzzing around over there, and no signals are sent down. So dreams happen at this time. What all does this sleep do? We will be seeing. Next slide, please. So this is another slide to explain the same thing in a different way. So you have a stage 1 where you are drowsy. Then you have a stage 2 where your sleep becomes more stable. Chemicals are there which block all the senses. Then you go to stage 3. Here is the memory forming sleep, where all your short-term memory information that is stored in a section of the brain is then transferred to the proper areas. It's like, if you can equate it to a library, for example. The librarian collects all the books that have been given by everybody. She stacks it on her table, and at the end of the day, when everybody has left, he slowly puts these books back in the correct section. So this is what is happening in this third stage of non-REM sleep. Growth hormone is released. I think the text is not clear because it actually is not clear. I could not make it very clear. I'm sorry, but I'm trying to explain this. So growth hormone is released at this time, and so important for the brain of growing children. Then you go to the REM sleep, which is a revitalizer of memory. So here you have the librarian who's put this information into these sections, and then the revitalizer is actually connecting the different sections in the different departments to make a experience out of these memories. I will explain more and more as we get along. Next slide, please. So this is just a picture to show you light sleep, deep sleep. Next slide. And non-REM sleep. Followed by REM sleep, where you are dreaming, you are completely paralyzed from neck down, and you are in a state of a complete state of rest. Next. So now, I'm sure you all have heard of EEG, which if anybody knows epileptic patients, etc., they know that EEG is a test that is done on epileptic patients. So what is EEG? You know an ECG. Everybody knows an ECG. It is the electrical activity of the heart. Similarly, the EEG is the electrical activity of the brain. So the author has very beautifully tried.
Please keep on mute. I request, please keep on mute.
Yeah. So the author has very beautifully explained how the brain waves change in different stages of sleep. Now, I will try to simplify this in these few lines here. When we are awake, we have two types of waves, alpha and beta waves, which are slightly rapid, fast waves. As you can see in the graph there, it's a little faster, squiggly, little up and down line, which means that the brain is active, receiving information from everywhere, trying to keep it and store it in a small place like random access memory for the time being. Maybe in a quieter phase, able to process a bit of it. But as much as possible, all signals are being received. So the brain is very active. All external inputs are received. Then you go to the non-REM sleep where I was talking about, which comes in 3 stages. Now the sleep has become a little more, the brain waves have become relaxed. Means they are slow. You can see the distance between the peaks of these waves. That means that the waves are slow. So these are the delta waves which come in, and they are called as spindles. So they are slow brain waves where the brain is now in a resting phase, muscles and all are resting phase. And this is the time where the information is distilled, literally, putting it from that short-term memory like you have in the computer, the RAM, to the hard drive. So all this information is being put in the hard drive, like I gave an analogy of the librarian putting the books back. Then come to the rapid eye movement sleep. Now here, as you can clearly see, even to the novice eye, the brain waves are looking almost exactly as you are awake. But when you see the person who is in REM sleep, this person is completely paralyzed, even more than you would see a person in would look as the person would look in non-REM sleep. So completely relaxed, completely. Whereas if you see the brain, it's extremely active. So what the brain does at this time is literally picks and chooses the various memories that have been stored in these places. And I'll give you an example. Now, suppose I am reading a chapter in history. Let's say I'm reading about Akbar. And this is there in my memory. When I go into REM sleep, what will happen is my brain will try to correlate what else I know about Akbar, about Mughals in general, which I might have read at some other time, about the geography chapter I might have read some time back, which will tell me about the geography of the places maybe that he has captured, why, etc. Then maybe it can correlate with the politics of the time that made Akbar the way he was, things like that. So then when I wake up from my sleep in the morning, my Akbar chapter is not just an Akbar chapter. It is information which I have gathered by not just reading the chapter on Akbar, but various other things that I already knew. I'm able to correlate and make it into one packet of information which is holistic and complete. So this is such an important part of memory making that this REM sleep is doing. And I will be going into it. I just thought I should briefly put this thought in your heads as we move along so that it becomes clearer and clearer when we go more and more into it. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah. So now, do we have only this one phase and over? No. So when you go into sleep, as you can see here in this graph, you are awake, you got into stage 1 of sleep, then you have one sleep cycle, which will last around 90 to 120 minutes, which I told you earlier. So this will include all the three stages of non-REM sleep. Stage 4 is supposed to be even deep. So 3, 4 are just almost close to each other. Then again, your sleep starts becoming lighter, 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 lighter. You go into REM sleep. Then the whole cycle starts again. And as you see, as we proceed towards the morning, in the early morning, the non-REM sleep is less and less, and the REM sleep is taking up most of the time. And the non-REM sleep is also in the upper phases. That means the lighter sleep. And then finally, you wake up. So in a night, you have had about 3 to 4 sleep cycles, depending on how long you have slept. Assuming you have slept for 8 hours, then you have had about 4 cycles of non-REM, REM sleep. So this is supposed to be what we need in for our health and well-being. At this point, I would like to show how the author talks in detail about the evolution of man. So why is it that man, as he started evolving, started having this REM sleep? So, as I told you, REM sleep is something that paralyzes you from neck down. Can you imagine in a jungle, the animals or ancient man himself, um, being in a jungle with non-REM sleep, plenty of it, is sitting duck for all animals and the predators that could get rid of you would be meat for somebody very soon. But as evolution started pushing man into, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You were
Yeah.
you were frozen for a minute, but I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
now we can. Yeah.
Yeah. As man started, as man started evolving further and further and became more of a terrestrial being, he could find places where he could make himself safe. And that's where REM sleep started taking over more. So these are all theories. I know that somebody might say that, "Oh, what is the proof for it all?" But I think these are all theories which have been formulated, and maybe recent research is being able to correlate and tell us that yes, this is how probably it was. And it is the REM sleep, the author claims, that has made us what we are. The buildings that we have made, the roads that we have made, the technology that we have done, because like I said, that REM sleep has helped us put things together and make a package of information that has helped us to take things forward, to put two and two together, to make our memory and convert it into an actual activity, to convert it into a research thing, to convert it into something much more greater. So important is REM sleep, and we have it as human beings, and this is what makes us different from the others. I will tell you why we say that we are the way we are, because our REM sleep is more valuable to us, or more important part of our system than animals. Animals also have REM sleep, and the author has talked about that. However, it is not always as deep as it is with us. Next slide, please. Yeah. So, like I was saying, benefits of REM sleep: it boosts your mood because it gives you the relaxation and you're fresh for the next day. It helps recover from stress. It improves your immune system because, as one understands, that immunity is something where our cells have to fight an infection, and in order to do that, our cells have to be in the best of conditions, and if it has to be in the best of conditions, the body has to be well rested, the organs have to be well rested. So that's the way your immune system can improve. It improves cognitive functions, it helps fight depression, and improves memory. And there are details of this that have been given in the book, which it may be difficult for me to go through. So maybe we can go in the discussion session on this. Next slide, please. Yeah. So then about non-REM sleep. In non-REM sleep, what happens is the physical repair of the tissues happens. You have worked the whole day, your muscles are tired, and now the body is working to get rid of all the toxins from the body, repair with the help of proteins, the tissues, the muscles, etc. Growth hormone is secreted during this time. Remember, growth hormone is the role of growth hormone is throughout our life. It is more in children because it actually produces a physical change in the child. So especially for children, growth hormone secretion, which happens during the non-REM sleep, is particularly very, very important. And deep non-REM sleep is essential for making memories. Like I told you that all the short-term memories information is processed and put into the long-term memory during the non-REM sleep. So if you have not slept enough after maybe having had a session of studies or something, and this is particularly important for youngsters out there who cram during the day and try to reproduce things for the exam. It is important that after your phase of study, you give your brain some time to put it from the short-term memory to the long-term memory so as to be able to reproduce this. So it is extremely important for keeping things in the memory. Now, one important thing that the author has stressed on, and every single thing that he has talked of in terms of diseases, I have tried to cross-research so as to be able to tell you how much actual truth is there to what he's saying. And so this is very much a researched factor that Alzheimer's and diseases of the brain like Alzheimer's, like dementia, are probably more common in people who tend to be chronically sleep deprived. And why is that? This is because they have actually done research, like I said, in those scary sleep labs on mice by making them sleep deprived, and actually gone on and dissected their brains to see that they have these plaques or deposits in the brain which resemble the ones that are seen in adults who suffer from Alzheimer's. So, and why is that? Because and this is something that was news to me also, we have something called as the glymphatic system. The glymphatic system of the brain is like a drainage channel which flows through the connecting cells of the brain. Now you have brain cells which are actually the core cells which send all the information, and there are connecting cells which connect these brain cells together. So these brain connecting cells are like channels which help to drain out all the waste products from the brain. So this becomes active in the non-REM sleep. This becomes active during the non-REM sleep. Like I mentioned the adenosine earlier, the adenosine along with certain other toxic products, which if we do not sleep well, may tend to remain accumulated in the brain, are drained out during non-REM sleep. Hence, it is likely that those who are chronically sleep deprived may have issues with memory, may have issues such as even Alzheimer's. Okay, please don't take it as a gospel truth, because most research is always research in process. So at present, this is the information that scientists are putting out. Now, memory and naps. I told you how that afternoon nap used to rejuvenate my mother, and she used to be ready for doing anything and everything. And I used to wonder why, like, because napping, etc., in our terminology, especially in medical college, was supposed to be laziness. So I told you how that memories are made by keeping the information in short-term memory and then putting it out into the long-term memory in the cortex of the brain. When you take a short nap, especially after having read something or trying to absorb something, and you take a short nap, and mind you, naps should be less than 45 minutes to 1 hour, because that's the time when they actually work as power naps or refreshers. Okay. um, I'll tell you why after I have finished this. So when you have taken that nap, during that time, the random access memory of your brain computer gets time to put all these memories into the cortex, and they get stored there for good, and your RAM is ready for more. Okay, so when you wake up from the nap, not only have you preserved your memories from before the nap, but your random access memory of your computer is free now to take in more. So that is why it is believed that naps are supposed to be helpful. um, I think Nitin, I forgot that questionnaire part. I'm so
Poll.
sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
So what I'll do is, before I proceed, because I really wanted your inputs on what you think of sleep before I proceed, because I'm halfway through, so it's no problem. Can I have that questionnaire out? Because I want some inputs from everybody.
Yeah.
It's just a
Sure.
simple 10 question questionnaire where maybe more to do with trying to find out about your sleep health. So if you give me that, maybe I will proceed further from there.
Nitin, will you launch or should I?
Okay, I'm launching it now.
Okay.
Okay.
So please try and go click what you think is the correct answer for you, because this is not a quiz, it's a questionnaire. And then we will go through the answers.
Have you?
Yeah, already done. People are
I
able
can
to-
see the questionnaire, so maybe
Yeah.
what you have to do is click, and once you've done all, you have to say submit.
Uh, do I have to share the screen? I don't think so, no?
Nitin, I will share the poll. I'll do
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's there. I can see.
I can see it. I can see
Yeah,
it.
I can see.
Yeah, okay. I'm able to see the
I'm done also.
Yeah.
I filled it also. So
Yeah, yeah.
we
Yeah,
can see.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
can see
it's
the
there.
this thing
It's
now.
there.
Yes.
It's there. We can see. So you can
I can see
in
the responses now. Fine.
yeah.
So
Already
14%, 16%.
yeah. So you can wait for another 30 seconds, that's all, and end the poll.
Yeah, let's see. We'll wait.
Yeah.
It's a long poll, so
Okay.
there are 10 questions.
Okay. Cool.
Somebody is asking for when we can have a Q&A.
I was actually planning at the end, but if you feel there's something you want to clarify, you can do that. After this questionnaire, I'm anyway planning. What do you say, Vasu?
No, Archana will keep it at end because
End, okay.
Q&A, once it starts, then it may
Yeah,
go
yeah.
for a long. So ideally, let's finish off the session in another half an hour or 40 minutes, and then we can keep around 15-20
Yeah,
minutes.
yeah.
Okay. More than 50% people have voted, so let's wait for some more time.
Nitin, if you can please flash the results, then we can quickly go through
Yeah,
the
we'll,
answers.
yeah, we'll end the poll, then I will flash the results.
Nitin, you can end the poll now. It's okay.
Yeah, 72% people are done, 74 people
You
are
just
doing it.
do the end. No, don't wait for everybody to finish. End the poll.
Okay, that's fine. I'm sharing the results now.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so I'm very happy to see that everybody feels, I mean, 100% people feel that they are and that sleep is as important as exercise and balanced health. 80% of you take 6 to 8 hours of sleep. There are very few who sleep less than 6 hours, so that's very good. So I think from sleep hygiene point of view, this group is really good. Do you take an afternoon nap? There are equal number of people, and there are some who nap only on weekends. That's fine, because I know our work schedules do not always permit this, but yeah, this is fine. I prefer to complete my pending work in the morning. There are equal number of people who do it early and late at night, and a few who sacrifice a meal or something to go ahead and do it. Oh my, many 40% respond to their morning alarm. Snooze and forget, only 8%. My, you're real performers here, wonderful. So, and there are some who don't use alarm. I'd like to know from those who don't use alarm, is their mental clock what keeps them awake? I mean, wakes them up in the morning. Again, equal number of people who are morning larks and night owls. So yeah, so this gives me some insight into the kind of group of people that you are. I can see you are all very successful professionals who know what is good for their health. Dreaming, yeah, I dream, but I never remember maximum, and I have dreams almost every night. Yes, 30%, and I never dream a very small 5%. I think that group can probably go into the last 65%, because I'm sure dreams may be happening, but they probably would not remember them. Sleepwalking, yeah, very few people sleepwalk. Yeah, somebody said in the chat that they are able to mind program themselves whenever they want, which I completely agree. I can do that as well. So I know that is a possibility. Stimulants like tea and coffee during work hours, equal number. Never. I think this population, I must clap my hands for them, because never using stimulants. It's very good for your health. And this is particularly for work hours. I think I wanted to frame it in a way to express that to keep awake, particularly to hit that brain do you take. So never is very good. And do you have trouble going to sleep? There are a small percentage, 5% always, and those who are never very good sometimes. So I hope that after this, we will be able to help that group who always has trouble sleeping, and maybe a bit help the group which has trouble sleeping sometimes. So thank you so much for this yeah, so yeah, I think there are a lot of questions coming in the chat box, but like Vasu has suggested, we will go ahead and we will look into the questions later, because discussion is always very interesting, and it can trail us off. So yeah, so ideally this should have happened in the beginning, but now I know that all of you are, a majority of you are good sleepers. You know the importance of sleep, and you do give enough time to yourselves, realizing that it is such an important part of good health. So I was on the drainage system of the brain, the glymphatic system, which I told you is functional during the non-REM sleep, and hence it is so important to have the non-REM sleep, that deep third, fourth phase of sleep. and naps as well, we talked about. Sleep and sports. Now, we hear of young children, like some of my patients, the very young ones who are training to become swimmers, wake up early in the morning, maybe 4 o'clock in the morning, do their warm-ups, etc., go for their swimming lessons or their squash or tennis
किती वेळा
lessons.
रिक्वेस्ट केली आपल्याला? या
Yeah. So
You can continue.
yeah. So they wake up so early in the morning and go into all their activities and then school, etc. So not sleeping enough has been shown to affect their performance in sports. Chronically sleep deprived sports individuals are known to have more injuries as well. So this is another research that the author has talked about, that we need to know, that sports individuals also need sleep, and now more and more trainers are stressing on this for their children. Next. Yeah. So let's go through sleep in different stages of life. Now, as I said, as babies and infants, we know sleep well most of the time. So what kind of sleep do they have? There are newborn babies who are sleeping for nearly 20 hours in the day. They just wake up to take a feed and go back to sleep. Gradually, as they grow up, the REM sleep and non-REM sleep starts becoming a part of their schedule. Believe me, but I don't know how they find out these things in an unborn uterus, but the author does mention that in fetuses that are floating around happily in the mother's womb, REM sleep happens to be a larger part of the sleep because they are almost sleeping throughout. And as after the baby is born, the REM sleep slowly decreases, and by the time the baby is around 6 months old, non-REM and REM make up 50-50 of the total 16 hours of sleep that maybe a 6-month-old may be going through. Then you come to a 5-year-old. As the child grows older, the REM sleep further decreases and makes up a 60-40, where 40% is the REM sleep. And this is the time when in the growing brain, the neurons are increasing in size. The brain grows up to 5 years of age, and most of the growth is over by 1 to 2 years of age. And after that, till 5 years of age, the growth is almost like an adult. So the neurons are being formed, connections are being made, new memories are being made on the basis of the environment and the inputs that the parents or the teachers give. So all this is stocked up in the child's brain, and the brain uses the sleep time to process this and to crystallize all this into permanent memory. So hence the importance of sleep in small children is even more, because like I said, the growth hormone is also secreted during that time. So if a child is sleep deprived at that time, during that growth, this can have far reaching impacts later into disorders like attention deficit and hyperactivity. A child who's hyperactive in class, the first question I ask them is, does he sleep well at night, when the parents come to me? And we find that most often they sleep very late, particularly in Mumbai, which is a city that is awake throughout. The fathers come in very late, and the child's sleep is postponed until the father arrives, because everybody is waiting for that one exciting figure in the family to come. So that sleep affects this child, and not sleeping affects the child into his behavior and performance and other activities in class and in school. Next slide. So I want to take a few minutes extra to talk about adolescence. I think most of us are of the age where we have children who are adolescents. I don't know how many adolescents are there on this session.
Not many.
Yeah, okay. So then I think you really need to listen. I think adolescents today have a lot of pressures. I have gone through my adolescence, and I don't think I had the kind of pressures that you guys have. And as parents, it becomes even more challenging for us to help you and help your deal with these problems. So I think parents should understand that adolescents have a different sleep cycle. Okay, so what happens is that in adolescence, the melatonin onset uh, occurs a little later. So when you tell your young 15-year-old that "Nahi, finish your work and go off to sleep, I want you in bed by 10 o'clock, it's probably not possible, because the very hormone that kicks off sleep has not taken off yet. Add to it the pressure that these children have to complete submissions. Then there is a Zoom meeting with their friends these days. Then there is some sports activity. Then there is some school gathering that has to be planned. All this has to be done outside school hours, and during school hours there is other activities that are done, so all this is kept for the night. So these children tend to sleep late. So it's literally a handshake between the biology, which is allowing the child to remain awake, and the requirement of the child, the behavior of the child, because that child needs to complete certain tasks for the day by keeping awake at night. Then the child will go to sleep, maybe 12 o'clock, hopefully. But the morning bell, school bell rings at the same time. It will mean that he or she has to report to school at 8 or 8:30. The child has not finished sleep. And like I said, the REM sleep is more toward the early hours of the morning. And that is the sleep that is helping in many aspects of memory and concept building, etc. And so this sleep deprived child goes to school and remains drowsy through the day. The teacher is shouting, not paying attention, etc., etc., etc. Then he comes back, and again the same cycle repeats itself. There are social obligations. They have to. Their peer pressures are there, which make them force them to go and meet up with friends, or maybe attend a party or things like that. And waking up is early, like the morning lark thing is more a demand. I mentioned in the questionnaire which of you are morning larks and night owls. So there is an equal distribution in the population of the attendees of this session. The morning larks in our world are around 70%, but here we found that you all are equally distributed. These are facts which I'm extracting from the book. And these 70% individuals are at an advantage, because most of the things in the world happen in the morning, 8 o'clock, wake up, or office at 9 or 9:30, whatever. So these people are definitely at an advantage. Whereas the night owls may be able to function perfectly well had the cycle been suitable for themselves. But because it's a world dominated by the morning larks, we tend to look at these night owls as sust hai, कोई life का pattern ही नहीं है, etc., etc. We even say that they tend to be lazy and so wake up late, but we don't realize that they are able to perform equally efficiently when their peak performance levels happens, and that is mostly at night. So this is what happens in adolescence. They become more night owls, but they are forced to comply with the morning lark behavior, and this causes a lot of problems in adolescence. Next slide, please. So this is a cartoon which I thought I would share. Someone is asking this child, James, wake up and tell me the last letter of the alphabet. And James is sleeping. So that someone tells him, okay, just one answer is enough. Z is enough. So we look at our young adolescents as people who are found sleeping at the wrong time, sleeping long hours in the weekend. Next slide, please. And why do they do that? Like I said, our system is burdening these adolescents with a lot of pressures at the age when their biology is probably not able to take it. For instance, 10th, 11th, 12th is the peak time when they are expected to perform the best. And there is loads and loads and loads of work in terms of submissions, reading their text. There is a class teacher saying something, the homework not done, etc. Then there are these uh, tuition classes and other things that they are demanding other things. And for children who are interested in extracurricular activities, they want to dance, they want to sing, they want to mix up everything together. It's too much, too much, too much to take. And so what happens is, as you see in the graph here, the blue indicates the school nights. There are 60% of children who will be sleeping less than 7 hours at school nights. And the optimum sleep, which is about 8 hours or so, is the least number of children. And as you see the orange part of the bar, maximum children try to compensate for this sleep debt. This is called a sleep debt, what you don't have in terms of the author puts the figure at 8 hours. Absolutely. If you have not slept those 8 hours every day, you are accumulating a sleep debt, which you're trying to fulfill at the weekend by sleeping almost through the day and getting the parents irritated. That's the time the parents have the kid at home, so they want to interact. So there's a lot of clash and noise in the house because of that. So in adolescence, what we have to remember is that we have to understand that their physiology is as such. And adolescents themselves have to understand this, that yes, no matter that their physiology is such, they have to try and balance things out so that they can get adequate amount of sleep, because the sleep is what is going to make it possible for them to achieve their goals, to perform their activities better. Because that small X amount of activity that they have put during the day will translate into X minus huge amount if they have not slept enough. Whereas if they have put in enough sleep, that X will, of course, get shaved off by a few numbers, but it will still remain very close to what they have put in. This knowledge, if our adolescents are willing to accept, I would say it would make a lot of difference to their performance in many ways. And the author talks a lot about depression, attention deficit disorders in the adolescent age groups, and he tries to put a lot of blame onto sleep loss for this. There may be, I think, when we look into the objective parts of the way we have to look at this book, there are several other reasons as well, but sleep is one of the important aspects that can affect these children. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this is just a graph to show you how the red line is showing the melatonin peak, which comes in later. And obviously that gap there between the black and the red line showing that the child needs so much more sleep, which the child is not getting because he is or she is forced to wake up in the morning as the schedule so demands. Next slide, please. And in old age, what happens? We are known, we have always been taught sleep in old age, oh, not much sleep is required at old age. But there are reasons why. They too require the same amount of sleep like we do. I'm not saying I'm very young, but I'm just trying to tell you that as a normal adult. But what tends to happen, because there is probably not much activity through the day, they too take a lot of daytime naps. So too many daytime naps eats into the total amount of sleep, because the brain is programmed for a certain amount of sleep that it needs. So it eats it into the night sleep, and then they find it difficult to sleep at night. Then their melatonin clock happens a little earlier than in the adolescence. So they sleep a little earlier. Obviously, they sleep earlier and their duration of sleep is finished. They wake up early. Then they wake up early and they realize there is nothing to do because the whole world is sleeping around them. That creates anxiety. That creates more of irritation as to, feeling loneliness, etc. One more reason is there are medical issues why they are light sleepers. So the author has said that the three key changes that happen in old age are the decreased quantity and quality of sleep as well. And the sleep efficiency reduces because they have medical issues. They have to get up and go visit the toilet. Sometimes, as is seen in this cartoon, the person has wet his bed. And there are also problems related to joint pains, etc., which can cause problems. Then there are medications that these people are on, blood pressure, for sugar, etc., etc. So these may interfere with sleep. So for the for the older citizens or the senior citizens out there, the message is very clear that you need the sleep. You need the same amount of sleep. However, you need to speak to your physician or your specialist to understand how your medications are probably interfering with it and what you can best do to minimize this impact on sleep. Because that may be the reason why you might be suffering from depression, that you might be suffering from anxiety, and that you might be suffering from sleeplessness itself. The lack of sleep itself is leading to sleeplessness. Next slide, please. Now, I come to sleep and animals on a little bit on the lighter vein. This is not my own invention. It's part of the book. And I think we are all part of the animal kingdom. So a quick look at the various animals and the amount of sleep that they have. As you can see to the leftmost part of this graph are the elephant and the giraffe. I was really surprised to know that they sleep the least. Just 2 hours to 3 hours of sleep. And towards the right extreme is the brown bat, which sleeps 19.9 hours, the maximum sleep in the animal kingdom. Now, evolution has, next slide, please. Evolution has reasons why this has happened. The light sleepers like the giraffe and the elephant, it may be related to their anatomy. Maybe they are so large and the way it is difficult for them to sleep too long. Maybe they would get attacked if they would just lie around there for too long. And they are grass eaters. It can also be their environment. So this is probably the reason why. Next slide, please. Then we come to the next group is the birds. Now, the amazing thing about birds is that since they live in groups, they also need to protect themselves. But the group allows them to, sleep in sections. That one section of birds will be, even while flying, which I find really amazing. And I really don't understand how they do this research, but this is what is mentioned in the book, and this is what I find that various ways they might be learning from by having captive birds, etc., and trying to figure out from that how it works out. So some take a sleep and the others remain alert so that the group is protected from the predators. So this is the way they do it. And in migration, that birds are having long sleepless hours, but they are known to doze off in small sessions, of minutes, so that they refresh themselves and go back again. So amazing. I really don't know how they do it. Dolphins are known to sleep a little longer. Now, how would a dolphin go into REM sleep if he's going to get paralyzed? So there are reports to say that their REM sleep is very less because they cannot get paralyzed. If they do, they will drown themselves. But fish are known to sleep. It's probably something that you wouldn't see. Those who have fish tanks in the house will notice that they just go to one side maybe and just slowly keep moving their tails and just stay afloat, and they're just taking a break. A koala, I'm sure all of you know, and this beautiful animal is probably going extinct. The koala sleeps more. Why? Because the diet of a koala is constitutes eucalyptus leaves. Eucalyptus is harmful. So eucalyptus leaves are the main diet, which are difficult to digest, and hence this koala needs to sleep to wash it off. Yeah, next slide. The brown bat sleeps for the longest time, 19.9 hours. So it just remains awake to eat and go back to sleep. Again, environment and evolution has created this. Next slide, please. Yeah. Now, I wanted to spend 5 minutes on sleep, dreams, and sleep and memory. So, next slide. So, sleep and dreams is something that we all associate with. And I'm sure, I know that some people, 5%, who said that they do not dream. I don't think there is anybody who does not dream. I'm sure everybody dreams, but we probably don't remember our dreams. I, for once, like I said, was famous for being Kumbhakarna, but that's exactly what I enjoyed my sleep for, because I used to get some fantastic dreams where I used to be flying, etc. And my friends used to be wanting to listen to what did you dream of today, Archana? So, and I would spend about lunchtime trying to explain what exactly happened. So that was a fun part for me. Anyway, so dreams and REM sleep, like I said, dreams happen during REM sleep. And what does REM sleep do? And I would like to read out here a passage from the book. As we enter REM sleep and dreaming takes hold, an inspired form of memory mixology begins to occur. No longer are we constrained to see the most typical and plainly obvious connection between memory units, which I was talking about, different memory units, not the plain obvious connection, but something more intricate you are imagining between these two different memories, which you have probably made at different times in your life. On the contrary, the brain becomes actively biased towards seeking out the most distant, non-obvious links between different sets of information. I think this is what explains dreams very briefly for us. So the Freudian concept is that dreams are a mix of our wishes and our fears. But recent research shows that it is probably a mixology of all the memories that you have made. And during that REM sleep, when the brain is in this active phase, putting things here and there, these flashes of images, memories, words, etc., are creating this image, which is the dream. uh, uh, Dreams and REM sleep are supposed to be helpful to be cathartic for painful experiences. Those who have had painful experiences, uh, this is again sleep lab research, according to the book and the author very beautifully mentioning how in sleep labs as well they have seen that dreams and what they do is they make them sleep and they try to talk to them after they have had this experience, and they are all the time recording their brain, their faces, their memories. So it's a very detailed kind of a science. So what they found is that those who go through these dreams and these nice deep REM sleeps have lesser and lesser painful effect of that tragedy or that bad memory, that the bad experience that they have had. So it is cathartic. It is something that washes off these bad memories from our brains, or at least mitigates their effect. Dreams and creativity. Now, I clearly remember while studying organic chemistry in my 12th standard, Kekule's experiment.
Kindly keep it on mute, please. Who is this?
Yeah, Kekule, I think, I don't know how I'm pronouncing the name, but the structure of benzene, which was until then considered to be a straight line, Kekule once dreamt that the snake put his own tail in his mouth, and that's the way he imagined the structure of benzene to be the organic structure, where it is a connected that way. So that came to him in his dream. Beatles singer Paul McCartney got some of the most beautiful songs when he just suddenly woke up from his sleep and his creativity had flown and the music just came into him. So these are anecdotal events that are mentioned. And so dreams, sleep are all helping us to enhance our creativity. Problem solving. Many times we are told that just sleep it out. Next morning you will wake up with a solution. And as a youngster, you feel that, oh, mom and dad are just wanting me to sleep. Whereas you have to understand that very often that random access memory information that you have stored is going to get processed. And next morning, if you have slept well, you will wake up with a solution to that problem. So youngsters out there, please try and understand that sleep is going to help you with problem solving. Sleep is going to help you with creativity, and sleep is going to help get rid of your painful experiences as well. And I, being a pediatrician, I'm always thinking of everything from the children's point of view. So those of you who have other questions for themselves, we can try to answer at the end of it, so that I will try my best to put in my knowledge into it. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this is again what I was trying to say. You learn, you consolidate, and when do you consolidate? You consolidate with the slow wave sleep. Slow wave sleep is nothing but the deep REM sleep. And then you are able to retrieve all this. So this is what boosts your memory. The slow wave sleep boosts your memory. Next slide, please. Yeah, what disturbs sleep? Now, alcohol, people may feel that, oh, after a peg or two, I sleep and I sleep very well. But next slide. What alcohol actually does, it's not just that it disturbs your sleep, it actually affects the quality of your sleep. Okay, alcohol, because you're having a fluid, you're not drinking enough water, so it tends to dehydrate you. So dehydration does affect the it's called the osmosis, the osmotic environment of the body, and hence it may affect your sleep quality. It also increases the wake periods because it might cause some dyspepsia or indigestion kind of symptoms. And there is reduced dream sleep, as you can see here. And because of this reduced dream sleep, which is supposed to take a certain part of your total hours, you may end up in the morning with what you call as a hangover. Next slide, please. What are the other things that affect sleep? And this is important for, again, for my young adolescents out there. Caffeine. I already discussed how adenosine receptors are blocked by this caffeine. It literally makes you feel that adenosine is not there at the present moment, and it tricks you into believing that you are awake. But once the caffeine has lost its effect, the adenosine has come back with even more power. And then you're again taking a bigger dose of caffeine to reduce that effect. So definitely stimulants are not recommended. Next is blue light. Blue light, which comes from media such as your phones, tabs, and computers, has blue light. And this does affect the secretion of your melatonin, and hence your melatonin secretion doesn't trigger off, and you can remain awake for hours together at night. Stress. We all know that when we are absolutely stressed, we are not able to sleep. And so we have to find ways to reduce stress in various ways. Maybe meditation, maybe yoga, maybe just a few cycles of deep breathing. I know I'm putting it very easily. There are many, many ways that one can deal with stress, but that is beyond the scope of what we are speaking. Medications. Now, many people are onto some medication or the other. There are cough medicines, cough syrups, especially, which are known to cause hyper alertness in the brain. They trigger that hypothalamus and thalamus and send signals of being awake. So that's why we are very, very particular about trying to not prescribe cough medicines to small children, and so that it doesn't affect their brain, because it's the brain where it acts. These drugs act and they affect sleep and cause hyperactivity, tremors, etc. And drugs that cause sleep. Yes, there are some drugs like alprazolam, etc., Alprax, I'm sure you know, which are routinely prescribed to senior citizens, that this will help you to sleep. But in the long run, it's not ideal. We have to find ways in which we can sleep without any help from medication. Next slide, please. Now, what does sleep deprivation cause? Now, here is the phase where the author is probably, you can get really scared. So this is where I would ask you to exert caution when you are reading this book. Again, I'll read a small passage from the first few pages. I doubt you are surprised by this fact, but you may be surprised by the consequences of lack of sleep, he means. Routinely sleeping less than 6 hours or 7 hours a night demolishes, he uses the word demolishes, your immune system, more than doubling your risk for cancer. Insufficient sleep is a key lifestyle factor. Key lifestyle factor. The choice of words is something that I am not happy about. Determine whether or not you will develop Alzheimer's disease. Even inadequate sleep, even moderate reductions for just 1 week disrupt the blood sugar level so profoundly that you will be classified as pre-diabetic. And there is much more. So I would advise you here, which I will talk about in the criticism of the book, that please read with caution when you're talking about the effects of sleep deprivation. Here I have put each and every aspect of the system that sleep deprivation can affect. As you can see in the brain, irritability, cognitive impairment, impaired moral judgment, hallucinations, ADHD, depression, which we talked about, impaired immune system, risk of diabetes too. Then there is risk of heart disease. There is increased reaction time. Now here, this is extremely important, and I will talk about it, because if you are sleep deprived, do not drive. Because if you are sleep deprived, you are probably even worse than having few pegs of alcohol. Because alcohol reduces your reaction time. But in sleep, you might go into a quick nap and it will just completely cut off your reaction. There is no delayed reaction, it's going to be no reaction. So sleep deprivation has been responsible for causing a lot of accidents on the road. And we know the big truck drivers, the major reason why they cause accidents on the big road are not just the alcohol, which we know, and the drugs that we know that probably they are addicted to, but also long hours of driving, sometimes 10 to 12 hours at a stretch, which deprives them of their sleep and causes accidents. Okay, so growth suppression and risk of obesity, all these are risk of obesity not just because you are awake more so you eat more. It causes an imbalance between certain hormones which are responsible for the appetite suppression and creating appetite. So that's what it is. Next slide, please. Yeah. So the criticism of the book, like I said, is the tendency to exaggerate things. And so I cross-checked all these facts that the author has mentioned. And I would like to share with you that in the British Medical Journal of Cancer in 2018, there is data published saying that, yes, lack of sleep is very, very detrimental to health, but there is no concrete evidence to prove that lack of sleep doubles the risk of cancer or triples the risk of something else. And the Alzheimer's, like I said, it's all research in the making. So please don't get very scared when you are reading the book, and causes suicidal tendencies, etc., etc. Very fatalistic view has been presented in certain ways. So when you read, just tell yourself, no, I'm not going to let this make me feel that, oh, I'm going to have cancer because I have not slept, or I'm going to get type 2 diabetes because I have been a chronically sleep deprived person. And one more criticism of the book, this is not my criticism per se, but this is what has come up about the book, and they are very, very minor ones. So do read the book, but with these few red flags that I would say. There are some words like exaggerations, like I just mentioned some time back. The word choice of words may be so exaggerated that it can hit you a bit, and you can feel, oh my god, like, is it really going to happen to me? And there are certain factual errors which are not supported by science. For example, the author says that we are in a sleep deprivation epidemic, and it has been declared by the WHO. That is not factually correct. What it is the CDC, or the Center of Diseases Control of the USA, has declared sleep disorders as an epidemic, not sleep deprivation. Whereas, let me tell you, data in our country tells us that 30% of us, nearly 30 to 33% of us, are sleep deprived. In our population here, we saw that most of us are taking our 6 to 8 hours of sleep. Few of us are sleeping even more than 8 hours. Very few are sleeping less than 6 hours. So we have a very healthy population here. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah. So before I go to my take on the book, I would like Nitin or Vasu to put out the quiz that I have made. It's again small 10 questions, which are takeaways probably from the talk that we've just had. So we have just enough time for discussion.
Yeah. Nitin, you can just launch.
Yeah, okay. I'm launching it now.
Yep. And Archana, how much time do you think this should take, so that we can only give that much time? And
yeah, just take about 1 minute, exactly 60 seconds.
So maybe 1.5 minutes, we can just
Yeah,
consider
yeah,
30 seconds.
Yeah.
Nobody is actually voting.
Yeah, it's happening. It's happening.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe you can wait for another 30 seconds, Nitin.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
Yep.
I should be ending the.
It's okay if you click the wrong answer. It's just for fun,
Okay.
actually.
I'm sharing the results now.
Yeah. So average human spends 1/3 of the life sleeping, which is true, correct. Everybody got this right. 90 to 110 minutes you sleep through various cycles. That is correct. I think I managed to get through to all of you. Dreams in REM sleep, very correct. The gland that is linked to sleep is the pineal gland, very correct. 80% have correctly answered. The hormone that triggers sleep is melatonin, again correct. Insects are known to sleep, yes, and that is called lethargic. They just become drowsy or lazy, not the sleep in technical terms. The mammal that sleeps for the longest time, the brown bat. Wow, I'm happy about that one. Then what is it that interferes with good sleep? All of the above, actually. Coffee, visual media, smoking, stress, all of the above. Nicotine as well. Lack of sleep can give rise to poor memory, anxiety, all of the above. That's correct. Lack of sleep is known to cause cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's. I think in this case, I would go for the last answer where I said there is no concrete evidence yet. And that is the more cheerful note that I would like to end it on, because in our world, we are all sleep deprived. And if each of us is going to tell ourselves that I have been so sleep deprived all my life, so I'm going to have cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's, and all of the above, then life is going to be difficult. So a quick note on what my suggestions are. The next slide, Nitin, and we will then have a 10-minute discussion. I think there is 10 minutes left. So I would like to tell you that don't put yourself under pressure saying that it's 8 hours a day. Everybody is designed differently. You can tell yourself what is right for you, and that would depend on the way you are set to do your things. So try to stick to a sleep schedule. You should exercise, but not too late, because that makes your muscles tired and then can tell on your sleep. Definitely avoid caffeine and nicotine, and especially before sleeping. And caffeine, ideally not about at least 5 to 6 hours before you go to sleep. Now, how many of us can do that? But yes, that's what's recommended. Avoid alcohol. Again, maybe too much alcohol is what could be harmful, because then you will have research saying that one peg is good for cardiovascular problems. So yeah, when I'm talking of sleep, or when the author is talking of sleep, he's really just looking at sleep, but we have to look at the holistic picture. Avoid large meals, that's for sure. I know you feel bloated, and then that can cause difficulty sleeping. Avoid medications. This has to be done with your doctor only. And prolonged medication, chronic medication in any case is no good. Try to fix in a nap if your schedule so permits, but if it is not possible, that's fine. But if you do sleep, try to make it before 4. And while relaxing at night, please, you youngsters out there, put those phones away and don't allow yourself to keep looking at the screen. It is not good. I'm out here sounding out to all of you, whereas my 2 youngsters are always doing that. But I don't know, someday they will become parents and they will know what and why I was saying all this. Do take a hot bath. Those of you who have difficulty in sleeping, a hot bath, because a hot bath dilates the blood vessels and sort of, helps to bring the blood pressure, etc., to a slightly lower level that makes you a little drowsy. Don't put on bright lights. Red light is supposed to be better than blue light when you go to sleep. Cooler temperatures, no TV, phone, get some sunlight in the daytime, and try to go to sleep. If you can't sleep, sit up, do something relaxing, refreshing, or maybe meditate, or try to do some deep breathing, and you will eventually fall asleep. And for the youngsters, maybe try to read a boring chapter from your physics book. I'm sure you will go to sleep. Next slide. Yeah. So thank you. And I think, Vasu, if we have a bit of time.
We do have. So, what I suggest, instead of people actually talking to you, they can put in all their questions in the chat box, and you can choose which you think, are the most important to be answered. So that way we will save on time, and as well as we have quality questions answered, because
My God, Vasu, there
I
are
can
so
see many questions. I can see many questions coming in, and obviously it's a very, very important thing and close to their hearts. But I would just request you to do that, because that
Vasu, can you do
will.
one thing? Can
Yep,
you go
yep.
from below? If you find something, keep it. I'll go from above and see if I start talking, then you can interrupt me in between for the next question. So one question from Ajay, how do we reduce the number of hours of sleep without compromising on the quality? Yeah, so ideally, what is said is that you cannot reduce. What you need is those 7 to 8 hours of sleep. You cannot reduce. So you have to probably compromise not on the quality of sleep. You will have to compromise on what you do in the daytime in order to get the best effect on your health. Okay, I don't use alarms, but I'm able to program my mind. I completely agree. I have been doing this for years. You can program your mind. I remember my mother used to tell me, when you're going to bed, just close your eyes and tell yourself, I want to wake up at 5 o'clock, or I want to wake up at 6 o'clock. I know there'll be youngsters laughing at me out there, but it works. Try it. And if you do it persistently, it will work, and it will work for sure. It will become your habit.
Yep.
Okay.
Archana, there is an important, quite an interesting question by Samir Danave. How to manage sleep in chronic diseases, especially in pains, without medicines? If you could answer.
Yeah. So, see, I'm not a pain specialist, but there are some chronic diseases where you do have to take medications. For example, arthritis or cancers, etc. You do have to take medication. But there are medicines where you will have to speak to your doctor and work out what is best for you. And if you do not want to take medication, you'll have to look at something alternate. Maybe like meditation, maybe like something where you look deep into yourself and try to focus yourself on something different apart from the pain. If you focus yourself away from the pain, very often you can divert yourself into not thinking about the pain. But at night, what happens is all those stimuli go. So obviously your focus comes on to the pain. So doing it completely without medication in chronic pain, difficult, but with your physician, you can work out some mid path. Is having more dreams a sign of good health or bad health? Uh, I also remember them vividly for 30 to 40 minutes. I agree, all this is right. Uh, Dreams is for good health, for sure, because it shows that you are having quality REM sleep. And it shows that your brain is actively involved in doing the mixology, the term used by the author that we were talking about. Prominent personalities say that they sleep only for 4 hours. I know, yet good sleep and health. I think, like I said, each one to his own, each one to his or her own schedule. So ideally 7 to 8 hours is the recommended sleep. I know I can manage with 7 hours sleep. There are some people who manage with 6 hours. 4, I think, is a bit too less, but maybe they have some gene in their body which is good for them and they are able to manage without long hours of sleep. So that's the answer to all these 3 questions. Vasu, anything else?
I see more of generic.
Yeah, that's all. That covers
Some
it.
say that there is, it's good to have nutmeg in the milk at night. Who are suffering with pain, do you advise?
Okay,
Ulka is asking.
nutmeg has some opioid properties. So don't be under the impression that Ayurvedic remedies don't have any chemical basis. Please try and understand. I have had babies, and this is my personal experience, where nutmeg has been given to the baby as a remedy for diarrhea, and the baby landed up with me with such deep um, sleep or irresponsive behavior that I actually thought the baby has got some brain fever. And we actually went into the past history. There was nothing wrong. All tests came clean, but this baby actually was being given nutmeg for diarrhea. So don't assume that the nutmeg doesn't have anything. I think kesar milk, etc., something that people do have, if they are going to produce some sleep effect, there is some chemical action over there. Okay.
So
One
I
question
think we
is,
are almost done. Yeah, Nitin,
how
you
do-
can give the last question and we can
how do
finish.
you assess the quality of sleep?
How do you assess the quality of sleep? Probably the best way to assess the quality of sleep is the way you wake up. If you wake up fresh, you feel rejuvenated, you feel ready for the day, that's the indicator that your quality of sleep is very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have
I
closed the
think,
chat box. So
yeah. I think we will close the session. Just another 2 minutes left. So, is there anything else, Nitin, you see in the chat box that you think?
So I want to talk about somebody asking about teenage daughters that are
Please.
night owls.
Yeah.
Please
Yeah.
answer that and we'll finish. Yeah.
Yes, we can
My
stop your
teenage
sharing.
daughters are night owls, and they find that it is the most productive time. Do I allow this to continue or try to reprogram it? A very tough question, honestly, for me to answer. Very, very tough. Because, like I said, that their biology is shaking hands with what exactly is required for them. But I think what you have to impress upon them, that what they are doing is okay as long as the productivity is good. But you have to impress upon them that this cannot go on, because their day begins early. So if their day begins early, this pattern is not good, especially in this pandemic. You have to have some sort of routine to your lives, because all of us are living in God knows what day it is, Sunday, Monday, morning, evening, we are not aware, because our schedules have gone for a 6. So I feel that you have to probably push yourself into some kind of a schedule, so that you know your system knows that yeah, this is the way it is to go. And someday, when these children get out of their 3 years of difficult phase, where they are, trying to decide on their career paths, etc., and get into a place where they are stable, then this abnormal pattern can cause a lot of harm.
So I think we are done with most of the questions, though there are many who are still thinking we should be asking you a few more questions. But with short of time, I think we'll end a question and answer session. You all can switch on your videos now, because I'm just